Hello friends, my name is Emile and welcome back to some more Forza Top Gear laps. Today we're taking a look at some German cars. Let's jump straight into it with the first car today, which is the Mercedes-Benz CLK GTR, 622 horsepower, 3,175 pounds of weight. This is the most powerful vehicle we have here today, and it's one of my more favourite supercars. I really like the CLK GTR. It comes from that crazy period of racing in the 90s where essentially they were just saying to people, oh hey, you only have to make 25 road-going versions of this car for you to get a part of the GT1 race series. And as a result, basically, there was just a ton of crazy contraptions about, with the CLK GTR definitely being one of the more insane. Anyways, this car is actually very good to drive. I did enjoy this car. When it comes to driving it. I've done a full review of the F1 GT, the CLK and the Nissan R390 here on this channel if you want some more in-depth thoughts on the way this vehicle drives, but it is pretty much excellent. Very good car to drive. Maybe a bit less grip than the Celine had last time out, but this car is quicker than the Celine, especially around the corners. This thing can just take a ridiculous amount of corner speed. It is pretty insane. The CLK is a very good car to drive, and it's one I would definitely recommend. Probably one of the more overlooked cars in Forza, but you should totally try it out. Next up, we have the Porsche 911 Turbo S, 560 horsepower, 3,607 pounds of weight. So, again, another car which I've reviewed on this channel. In fact, this one was done very recently. I compared it to the McLaren 570S, and ultimately I actually found this to be the more preferable car over the 570S. However, by no means did this car pass my test with flying colours. I found the 911 Turbo S to be kind of understeery, like very understeery. A lot more understeery than you'd probably expect. Not quite as bad as the McLaren, but it was still, I mean, it's not very bad, it was moderate. But it's still not a particularly nice vehicle to drive. In the wet, it does a bit better, mostly because cars in the wet, you know, naturally they will understeer and oversteer more, and the Porsche doesn't get affected by that so much because it has four-wheel drive. Still not an amazingly nice car to drive around here, certainly compared to the sort of cars this compares to. I would recommend going for something like, you know, cars in this class like the Ferrari F40 over this vehicle, but it wasn't too bad. It's just not a great car to drive, the 911 Turbo S, unfortunately. It just isn't great to drive. Yeah, that's really all I can say about it. Kind of disappointing. Next up, we have the Audi RS6 Avant, 552 horsepower, 4,266 pounds of weight. This is the heaviest vehicle here today, which is kind of, well, I guess it's unsurprising when you consider what else is going to be going around the track today. Anyways, the RS6, I have one word written down here on my notebook, which is meant to sort of brief me on how these vehicles drive, and it is understeer. My god, the RS6 likes to understeer. I mean, you kind of expect it. It's a very heavy car, and it has 552 horsepower. I would expect understeer. This is just, it's just not great to drive. Again, it's kind of like the 911 Turbo S in that sense. It's probably a little bit better than the Turbo S to drive, just out of the fact that it's got a bit less power, and due to the fact it's a wagon, you kind of expect it to drive a bit worse. The 911 Turbo S will surprise you with the amount of understeer that has. The RS6 probably won't, just because, you know, you look at the car and you get an idea of what it's going to be. It's nowhere near as bad as you'd think when you look at it, though. You kind of look at this car and go, that's going to be interesting to drive, and I mean, it's not actually. It's just, it's not great by any stretch of the imagination. I certainly wouldn't recommend it. But it isn't a terrible car to drive. It looks pretty cool as well, and I like my wagons. So I guess there's some plus points for it. Next up, BMW M6 Coupe, 560 horsepower, 4,255 pounds of weight. So this car weighs slightly less than the RS6 by a grand total of 11 pounds, and it also has 8 more horsepower than the RS6. So that's pretty interesting. Ultimately though, the M6 is, again, a not very good car to drive, and this is probably my least favourite of all the vehicles I drove here today. I really don't like driving the BMW M6. I remember driving it in Forza 5, I was not a fan of it at all. It's a bit improved in 6, it's still not great. It wants to slide a lot. which doesn't really suit my driving style. Of course, that's sort of what most of the BMWs do, i.e. older BMWs. Most of the newer ones actually handle pretty decently. The M4 is a fantastic driving vehicle. The M5 is pretty darn good as well. The M6, for whatever reason, just is not very good at all. It wants to slide everywhere. It is very heavy feeling as well. You will feel the weight of this car. I was just surprised by how much this thing weighs. I mean, I knew it'd be heavy, but 4,255 pounds. Again, 11 pounds less than what the RS6 Avant weighs, and that is a big, heavy family wagon. It's not a good car. I would not recommend this vehicle at all when it comes to driving it. Next up, we have the Mercedes-Benz AMG, the Mercedes-AMG C63S Coupe, 503 horsepower, 3,968 pounds of weight. The C63S. This is actually a colour shifting car. I should mention that quickly. This car was a different colour when I recorded this replay. Apparently it just turned it to silver. I actually got the paint job from the AMG GTS. I actually got that nice goldy colour. For whatever reason, it's overridden it in the replay, so I don't know. Anyways, you're not here to know about the fact that this car can colour shift, although you might be. C63S, what is it like to drive? It is actually pretty darn decent. This car's a lot better to drive than I actually remember it being. I'm not a huge fan of the modern C-Class, I've got to be said. It kind of looks like it's melting a bit, and the C63S, and in fact the C-Class in general these days, just very much has the look of, wow, I really want to be an S-Class. You know, this thing basically looks like the S-Class Coupe, but smaller. It's weird. But yeah, it's actually a decent vehicle to drive. No real handling issues to report of in this vehicle. It makes a very nice little grumbly noise. Solid car, actually. I did enjoy my time with the C63S. I would highly recommend this over the BMW M6. This car has quite a bit less PI than the M6. Like, I think it's got like 40 PI less, but it's still a better car. Go with that one. Next up, Porsche Macan Turbo, 400 horsepower, 4,244 pounds of weight. In case you didn't know, there's a bit of a pattern there. The RS6, 4,266, M6, 4,255, Macan, 4,244. So we've got decreasing variables of 11, which is interesting. Anyways, the Macan, how does it drive? It drives great. I really like driving the Porsche Macan Turbo, actually. It's not my favourite driving of the SUVs. That would probably still have to go to the BMW X5. The X5 is, and I don't want to speak too much about the X5, but the X5 is an amazing handling car. It handles basically like a Subaru Impreza, which is pretty incredible considering its size and everything. But the Macan certainly is not bad either. I really did like my time on the Macan. I also really like the Macan as a car. I think it looks very, very good. Not usually a big fan of these bigger SUVs, especially when it comes to Porsche. I've never been a huge fan of the Cayenne. But the Macan, though, is a very nice looking car. Kind of looks more like a hot hatch than anything else. Yeah, Macan was a decent vehicle to drive, actually. Of course, four-wheel drive. I mean, it will understeer if you push it. It won't oversteer. Yeah, it's a good car. That's all I can really say about the Macan. It's not the quickest car in the world. It's only got 400 horsepower, which is actually less than you'd probably expect just by looking at it. But yeah, certainly not a bad car. And finally today, the Volkswagen Scirocco R is our final car. 261 horsepower, 2,963 pounds of weight. This is the least powerful vehicle here today by like 140 odd horsepower. And it is also the lightest vehicle here today by a relatively sizable amount as well. The Scirocco is also our only front-wheel drive car today, and I was genuinely curious about this, because we haven't really had a modern hot hatch go around the Top Gear track yet. I was kind of curious to see how the rain would sort of affect these vehicles. I guess we've had the Corsa VXR go around, but the Corsa isn't a very good handling car to begin with. The Scirocco was very, very decent, actually. This was a really, really good car to drive, actually, and I was not expecting that, especially when it comes to the wet. I don't remember the Scirocco ever being this good to drive. It's also worth noting the Scirocco is actually one of the first cars in Forza Top Gear lap history to ever constantly improve on its lap time. Like, this car just kept setting better and better and better times. It did not have one dud lap. Most of the cars that I drive around here, you know, usually have between 2 and 4 dud laps. The Scirocco had none. It was constantly getting quicker. So by that theory, if I kept doing laps in this car, it would have gotten quicker and quicker and quicker. I don't know how quick it would have gotten, but the Scirocco was amazing to drive. This is a really, really good car to drive, and I was not expecting that. So if you're looking for a front-wheel drive car to drive in the wet, Scirocco R may have your back. Moving on to the times, and the CLK GTR becomes the fastest car around our track with a 1:18.514, placing it above the Celine S7 by an entire second, which is pretty darn good. 911 Turbo S goes into 6th with a 1:21.112. Loses out to the C7 Corvette, which was a superb car. Beats the Viper just about, beats an F40 as well, which is pretty decent for that car. Still not the greatest handling vehicle, I'd probably avoid that one. Next up, RS6 Avant goes into 16th for 1:24.241, which, considering the understeer issues, is a pretty fantastic time. It beats a Porsche 911 GT3, beats a TVR Cigaris, beats a Lotus Exige. That's quick for a wagon. Moving down the board, the Mercedes C63S Coupe goes into 24th for 1:26.076, and the BMW M6 is just behind that with 1:26.123. So despite the M6 having the advantage in PI, the C63S was the infinitely better car to drive. But both those cars set pretty darn good times. They both beat Bentley Continental GT, Audi RS5, Dodge Charger Hellcat. Respectable times from both of those cars. And finally today, the Porsche Macan goes into 44th for 1:30.395. The Volkswagen Scirocco, however, is the surprise of the day, going into 45th for 1:30.632. It beats out an old Porsche 911 Turbo, beats out a Mazda RX-8, beats out an Evo 9 Lamborghini Miura. That Scirocco was insanely quick. I don't know, like, seriously, I don't remember the Scirocco being nearly as good to drive as it was. Maybe when we finally get around to putting more of the hot hatches around, the hot hatches will really show a surprise here. Maybe that's what they've been looking for. Maybe the wet is where front-wheel drive cars truly start to shine, especially if they're good normally. Anyways, friends, and that is it for this episode of the Forza Top Gear Laps. I do hope you've enjoyed. Next episode, we're going to be taking a look at some Italian cars, so join me for that. Thank you all very much for watching. My name's been The Real Emile, and until next time, farewell.